Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 498. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind, interested in learning about trauma, and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. All right, everyone. I'm very excited to announce that the Trauma Therapist newsletter has finally launched. Yesterday, I sent it out to all the new subscribers. And if you're interested, you can check it out by going to the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. My goal here is to make this the go-to online resource for therapists of all kinds interested in learning about trauma and keeping up to date. Each month, we'll be looking at different modalities and conferences and events that are coming up, books and articles that are amazing, and also ones that are about to be published, workshops that are coming up. Each month, we're going to spotlight a seasoned therapist. This month, I'll just give you a little sneak peek. We're looking at spotlighting Lisa Ferenz, the amazing and inspiring Lisa Ferenz. What else? I'll even be doing a behind the scenes on what it takes to keep the podcast up and running and the newsletter up and running and the workshops up and running. Once again, if you're interested, check it out at the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am super excited to have as my guest today, Chris Prange-Morgan. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. So Chris wears many hats. She's a wife, mom, writer, speaker, hospital chaplain, advocate, and former social worker and retreat leader. Chris earned her Master of Religious Studies from Cardinal Stritch University in 1995 and her MSW from Loyola in Chicago in 2002. Chris also has done advanced graduate work in pastoral counseling and has worked as a therapist in the inner city of Philadelphia prior to returning to her home state of Wisconsin, or I should say, Philadelphia. I used to live in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
In April of 2018, Chris's parenting article featured in the Huffington Post got the attention of NBC and landed her on the Today Show, where she shared some of her parenting and health journeys. As an adoptive mom of a child with a history of trauma who herself became a trauma survivor, Chris continues to be a recovering idealist, an advocate for self-care, creating supportive community, and mindful parenting. Awesome. All right. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
All right. So how long were you in Philly?
I was out there for almost 4 years.
Oh, okay. So you got a nice dose of it.
I did. I worked in West Philly for a year. I worked in Ardmore for some time. And,
oh my God, I used to live in Ardmore.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, the main line.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And I moved out to Philly to be part of a volunteer community for a couple of years. And then that was when I got my start in therapy, doing therapy. And that's when I started to learn about trauma,
right.
as a 22, 23-year-old.
Right. All right. So let's, we were talking a little bit about what direction we were going to go in before we started recording here. Let's dive in here. How is it that we're sitting here talking? How is it that you wrote this article and landed on the Today Show? What got you here?
Yeah. So, I, to kind of back up, I was a social worker for many years, was a clinician, met my husband, adopted 2 children from China. And I didn't know, they gave us a lot of information about what to expect with adoptive kids, but I never really knew what the experience was going to be like to live with. And so my daughter didn't have a lot of major issues, but my son ended up with some very, very significant issues. And even as a clinician, and my husband's a school psychologist as well. So we kind of thought, when we went into this, we thought, we're perfect. We're perfect.
We got this.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? How
Sure.
old were the kids when you adopted them? And did you have any idea of what trauma they had experienced?
Yeah. So my daughter was 26 months
Okay.
And so they were both toddlers. My son was 28 months. And our daughter, we got a lot of information about her. She looked healthy in her photos, and they both had special needs. They cleft lip and palate, which we had really good insurance at the time. So it was kind of a no-brainer. We thought, well, we can do this. My son was a total other ball game. We believe he probably had spent some time in a dining room. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, there was like a series that someone took a camera, a hidden camera into some of the orphanages in China and found out what it was really like. And our son, I learned that he was not thriving. He was like he was like 13.9 pounds at about 21 months. And of course, physically, and at the time, and this is where, you think, oh, I can handle this, but you just do not know the extent of the neglect and what that does to a human being until you're living with it. So I, as a social worker and someone having all this experience, I was like, I'm going to save him. We're going to do all that we can to move heaven and earth and bring him home. And I did. And we did. And it had a pretty disastrous consequences. The fallout was pretty hard, was really bad. Not that I'm saying I wouldn't do it again, because, I've got a lot of other things I can talk about, but there was a lot, even having a clinical degree, that I was not prepared for.
Go. You got to tell us. I mean, you can't stop there.
Yeah,
what?
Yeah. So we brought our son home, and he felt kind of like an 8-month-old, possibly in like a 28-month-old body, just delays all across the board, and attachment challenges. There were significant attachment challenges, and there were things that, like at the time, I thought if I just try hard enough to attach, we did all the techniques that they told us about. I held him facing me, and he would purse his eyes shut, and he would push himself away, and he'd go limp. And there were all of these, looking back, these trauma responses that were kicking in that I took it personally back then. Like, oh my gosh, I just have to try harder. You have to connect with my child. And that just didn't work. He just would dissociate and continue to push himself away. And it affected our whole family. So, having the clinical degree, I knew what to do. We were in China, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall, like this is going to be a long haul for us. So I got on the horn with supportive organizations that we connected with as soon as we got home. And, the Birth to 3 program, we had, I got him tested at the hospital for neurological issues that we thought he had. And we just, went round and round. And the upshot was that his problems stemmed from the neglect that he suffered, and they didn't go away, obviously. So the way that played out in our lives several years down the road was that I held all this pent up trauma that I was dealing with, as this mom who thought I could just take it all on. And I ended up having an accident, a disastrous accident, actually, in a moment of distraction when I had my son with me at our climbing gym in town. My whole family climbs. We love the outdoors, and that was my way of sort of getting my workout. And I brought him, I brought him with me to the gym, and I forgot to clip in, and I fell 30 feet, and ended up having a ton of my own medical problems afterwards. So yeah, it ended, and I ended up an amputee. Then there was a lot of surgeries, limb salvage surgeries. And so anyway, the long and the short of it was I had to learn how to take care of myself. And I never knew how to do that before. I was taking care of everybody else. And that was my huge life lesson.
That's such an intense story. And I can't help but mentioned the fact that you said you had to learn how to take care of yourself, and it's so symbolic that you weren't clipped in, right? I mean, that's how do you take care of yourself when you're climbing, is you clip in. Wow.
Yeah.
You talked about the neglect and your son was dissociating and he was like squinting his eyes and pursing his lips and so forth. How else did that manifest? What did that look like?
Clear across the board. There were, you could tell he was having these internal struggles, going with any sort of, any kind of expectation was sort of met with a reflexive, no, not going to do that. From being held to, eye contact to, I'm just trying to think, going to bed at night, he would just, kick the wall all the time. And, then we would go in there and we'd try to console him, and there was really no way to console him. We had bedwetting issues over the years. I mean, there's just a long list of, like attachment challenges that, and then when he went to school, he had a lot of learning lags, a lot of behavioral, like kind of, there's one year he peed in the bubbler at school. There were things that he did, as the years rolled out, that we began to see that this is a result of his having a hard time connecting with particularly females. It was people in authority, but it was more, he would have problems with his female teachers over the years. And he's made amazing progress. Don't get me wrong. Like, we have stayed in the game. He's connected very well with my husband over the years. And I had to learn how to just not allow my sons, not take these things personally, because my guess is he, that early loss, that initial parental mother wound is huge. I mean, and I don't think we talk about that in adoption circles. And if we do, it just gets a little bit of mention, but then we move on. Like, I believed the narrative that, adoption is a noble thing, and you go into this and you save these children. And I've kind of come around to the belief that, while it's good that we are able to do this, like we have a need to really assess the deep trauma that these kids come to us with.
And how did you go about doing that?
I connected. Well, we had therapy. We had family therapy. We had therapy for our children. I did a lot of reading. My accident, I learned how to take care of myself. And oddly, if hindsight's 2020, I needed to learn how to do that. And as I learned how to take care of myself and pay attention to myself, and mindfulness came into the picture, like I learned how to take care of or pay attention to the things that I was experiencing in my body when my son would sort of not connect with me. And like, it kind of kicked in some of my trauma responses. So, so like I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I know you had Bessel van der Kolk on here some time ago. And that was helpful to understand, like, that this is what happens when these unconscious things kick in and they bring up things in you. So my life has really kind of become this mission, I guess, to help people understand that you need to be in touch, in tune with your own body and your own responses in order to not respond to whatever that trauma is in your life. For me, in the early days, it was my son, and it still is from time to time, or like now with my daughter being 15, she's incredibly intelligent. And, with the pandemic and things like that, like, it took me some time to realize that because this pandemic is happening, when she was in her orphanage, her touchstone was this little girl, this little toddler, and they were like thick as thieves. And that was the way she survived.
Mm-hmm.
And now that she can't be with friends, she's back at the age of 2, not being able to be with the only little person that helped her survive. So, I can't, and I so want to just go into your typical parenting mode where I just want to help my kids understand,
Right.
you know what I mean? But it's not that easy. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing these details. And the story is, to me, it just sounds, the fact that you experienced this tragic accident. I don't know. It just sounds cliche, but it sounds like you're almost saying it was a wake-up call to you, in a sense, that was one of the things that helped you, open your eyes to see how to work through managing these kids.
It really did. I don't think, had my accident not happened, I still think I would have had that hero complex. It's interesting. I still see a lot of young clinicians, and I see myself in that, where, and I think back to when I used to work in Philly, actually. And I worked with people in recovery from substance abuse and mental health issues. And I remember thinking, oh, all I need to do is, get on the right medication or whatever. And these were women with children. And at the time, that was still when we had 6-month inpatient residential programs. And that was nice. And I saw a lot of people do really well. But I also saw systemic trauma. And I knew at the time, if we don't do something to change the structures that keep these problems going, we're not going to see changes in, like I saw the children who would be left with the Department of Human Services because the parents would, or the moms would leave them because they'd go out and go get high or whatever. But when they came into treatment for like 6 months and I came to really know them, I was just blown away with their resilience. And I saw it wasn't as simple as just a medication or just whatever. It's that sort of cascading effect of, it's a bigger issue, and Chris, you're not going to solve it, and just companion them and learn and ask the questions. And I've kind of learned that with my son too, and with my children. It's like, don't jump to fixing. Listen and be there, and know that there's not going to be any quick fixes. And that's hard. As someone who went into the field as a fixer, it's been probably the biggest or most profound lesson I've ever learned, honestly.
Yeah, I so appreciate you saying that. I mean, I had that same experience myself. This idea, a lot of people go into this field obviously because they want to help, and they also want to take away pain and fix, and a lot, all of which really is done with the best intentions. But there's this whole underlying reasoning that people go into this field. Oftentimes there's a reason people go into this field, and it's not just because they want to help. Well, why do you want to help, guy? What's going on back there? And what you're saying, Chris, is this whole discovery of that and a constant awareness of that. What would you say? I heard you say you see a lot of kind of newer clinicians. What do you say to them? How do you advise them if you do?
Yeah. So, well, I've changed in my role a little bit. After my accident, I sort of knew I had to step away from, going out into not the most safe neighborhoods. And I decided to become a hospital chaplain. And I think a lot of that was to kind of work through a lot of my own losses. And at the time, like I'm a real cerebral person. Like if I can't figure it out and talk with other people, I struggle with that. So anyway, I went into, as a lot of us probably do, right? So I went into a clinical pastoral education program and did four units of CPE. So when I go into the hospital units now during COVID, I will see a lot of clinicians in the form of like nurses or respiratory therapists or whatever. And everyone wants to help, right? But we can't, because we have this looming pandemic and we don't want to catch this virus. And I just had something like this happen to me just the other day, and they wanted me to come deal with a family of a patient who was COVID positive, and we can't go into those rooms. And I my whole life, and with my accident too, I just respond, right? There's a need and I will just go and take care of it. And because of my accident, I've had to actually kind of look at the patient's chart, and I'll go in, I'll see if their COVID test has come back or not. And if it hasn't, I have to talk to the people in the unit and say, can you let me know when it's safe? Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of young clinicians in the hospitals that just want to help, and all of a sudden they're exposed. And, mm-hmm. It's not in the way we've kind of gone with the world in general. And I'm not going to get into politics or anything like that. We're not encouraged to put ourselves first. Those of us who go into the field, it's like, you're here to help. But we can't do I found for myself anyway, I couldn't do a good job of helping if I don't take care of myself. I mean, that was my biggest takeaway with my son and with my accident. Like, I spent years having to rethink the way I did things. And so the way I respond to people in the hospitals now are like, how are you taking care of yourself? Are you able to talk with your other colleagues? Or, everyone is stressed out. Everyone is feeling like their needs aren't getting met because they work in healthcare in a pandemic. And I kind of don't care. Like, I know it's hard for everybody, but I still think that it's not selfish to put your needs first. I had to learn it's not selfish.
Well, I think along with that, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think along with that, phrase to put your needs first, it's also what we're talking about here is cultivation of your own self-awareness, right?
Yes.
And your own self-trust and your own self-compassion and presence and all of those things, which, I mean, certainly for me, when I was first seeing clients, as someone still in graduate school, I knew all of those things existed and I knew they were important, but I didn't realize how important. I thought the goal was to, help that fix that person over there by, taking page 221 of Bessel van der Kolk's book and implementing that specific intervention. But what you're talking about here is so vital, not just within the context of therapists and therapy, but human to human.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the more I've done this work, and it's been my own work. It's been the more I learn about myself and that, trauma response or the way I react without thinking and without paying attention to what's happening in my body and my mind, the more I've learned about other people. And that's been the gift in all this is like, I've really gained a lot from a lot of the Eastern beliefs with, mindfulness and awareness and this idea that, sometimes things come to fruition in their own time. And, and I'm really German. Like, I can tell my husband teases me all the time because like, I'm very stubborn and like and that's why I went into the field. That's why I became a clinician is because, and I still want to make changes, but Mother Teresa has this quote: "If you want to save the world, go home and love your family." Mm. And for me, that really held true. And it's kind of worked because over the years, like if I haven't been able to, pay attention to what's happening within myself, I wouldn't be able to be present for my kids. You know what I mean? And then that it's translated into my career too. So it's been a complete 180 from early on. I mean, that said, I'm so glad to have had all the training, psychopathology and family systems has been huge. I mean, all those things are so helpful, but I've started to look at the world less as, with a pathological perspective and more from a trauma lens. Mm-hmm. Because of what I've seen with my son and because of what I used to do, as in my social work career, like I see so many things as stemming from those adverse childhood experiences. There's so many problems as stemming from those ACEs. And I'll just leave that there because I could go off on a tangent. So,
well, that's perfectly fine. But it's just interesting to hear you, describe yourself and, certain proclivities and so forth, but also kind of learning and adapting with this newfound, profound knowledge that you have about the importance of, listening and being present. That to me really is what this podcast is about. That to me, when we see someone or are in the presence of someone who is living that, right, embodying what you're talking about, we are glued. We're drawn to that person because there's you talked about things happening in their own time. That is you can feel that. And there's a calmness for me when I'm in the presence of someone who is that, who's able to do that. I'm like, wow, there's something's going on here that I need to learn and I need to, take on. It's so powerful. And it's so healing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This idea that we can learn from other people. Like we don't have all the answers. Right. That's huge.
I remember it just brings up a story for me when I was I think one of my internships right out of the gate, I think I was still in school, and it was in a home for seniors who were experiencing Alzheimer's and so forth. And I would visit, clients and so forth. And I remember one of the clients I was seeing, and I was trying to, as best as I could, utilize these interventions that I was learning from this sensory motor psychotherapy workshop that I was going through. So I was learning about trauma early on, fortunately. But, sure enough, I was trying to get in there and fix. And my first experience with this amazing supervisor I went in there and I was so frustrated. And I was like, she could sense it too. She said, "What's going on?" I said, "Miss so-and-so, she's not listening to me. She's not listening to me." And she said, my supervisor said to me, and I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she said, "What makes you think they need to listen to you?" And that just was a mind shift for me.
Yeah.
It was, so I love what you're talking about here. It's just so profound, really.
Well, yeah. And, my husband, he'll talk a little bit about, what he does too, as, school psychologist, and how humbling it is when, he was working in a suburban school district for about 20 years. And now we're in the city, and he's seeing a lot of the effects of multi-generational trauma. And the fact that I'll tease him because, we're kind of both cut from the same cloth. I mean, we went into the field because we thought we had something to give, right? So 15 years after parenting children from traumatic histories and all that does to humble you as a parent. So he's coming home and he's talking about like some of his, what he sees seeming to be, trauma-based, like, And he's glad that we have had this experience. So he just has this intuition that this is a bigger issue. This is not going to go away because I have all this knowledge, Yeah. And, for me over the past, 3-4 years, sitting with people who are dying and just having things be put in perspective, like, listening to stories. I just so love listening to people's stories and learning from them. Like it's like sitting at the foot of some master, it's been so humbling. Yeah. So, I mean, and it's interesting because people will say, after all you guys have been through and after your accident, and, I ended up, becoming an amputee. I lost my leg below the knee because they couldn't fix my leg. So, you can see that, I have this quote unquote disability. People are like, how you still maintain a decent attitude with this? And for me, it's like, what it's done is it's opened up this idea that we're all kind of broken and we come together and we share in our brokenness so we can heal. And the more I sit apart from you and don't look at my own kind of woundedness, the more we won't heal. So it's been a constant learning experience for me.
So once again, I'm speaking with Chris Prange-Morgan. And Chris, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I have my email where my husband and I are kind of in the middle of starting a business to help other parents like ourselves. So my email would be chris@adoptiveparenthelp.com. Okay. And Chris is CHRIS.
Okay. In terms of go-to book recommendations, whether trauma-related or not, or parenting-related or not, whatever, what would you like to share?
Yeah. Well, I like a lot of Pema Chodron's books. The Places That Scare You is a really good one. And When Things Fall Apart.
Yeah.
Those were the ones that got me through. And the idea of self-compassion and compassion for others. And then also the book by John Kabat-Zinn, Full Catastrophe Parenting. I know it's parenting, full catastrophe living. That was a little slip myself. It's been a parenting experience for us, but yeah, full catastrophe living. That was a good one for me too.
Awesome. All right. We'll have those listed up at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Well, you are certainly an inspiration. And I just really appreciate you sharing your story and the beautiful imperfections of your story. And it's been great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for your work. This is such important stuff. And I've told so many people about coming to check out the Trauma Therapy Project because it's so important. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Have a great holiday.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. I'm very excited to announce that the Trauma Therapist newsletter has finally launched. Yesterday, I sent it out to all the new subscribers. And if you're interested, you can check it out by going to the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. My goal here is to make this the go-to online resource for therapists of all kinds interested in learning about trauma and keeping up to date. Each month, we'll be looking at different modalities and conferences and events that are coming up, books and articles that are amazing and also ones that are about to be published, workshops that are coming up. Each month, we're going to spotlight a seasoned therapist. This month, I'll just give you a little sneak peek. We're looking at spotlighting Lisa Ferenz, the amazing and inspiring Lisa Ferenz. What else? I'll even be doing a behind the scenes on what it takes to keep the podcast up and running and the newsletter up and running and the workshops up and running. Once again, if you're interested, check it out at the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com. All right.